yeah, I think like at the end of the day, it's all just it's a fight with your brain. And I've suffered like really bad depression, my anxiety, like I have crippling anxiety most of the time. And it's just, it feels like you're bantering with your brain all day. And people are like, oh, why are you so tired? You didn't do a whole lot today. And I'm like, I know. But this 6 inches of space between my ears says different. And so it's one of those things. It feels like a constant battle with your brain. But the moment you see that, you know what, maybe they didn't have a good upbringing either.
Welcome back, or welcome if it is your first time here. So today I am interviewing Morgan Storch, and I am very, very excited for our conversation. I met Morgan through an agriculture program called 4-H. We met when we were a little bit younger, and I've been following her and watching her on Instagram and seeing how she has become this inspiring, bright light on social media, and so I had to invite her onto the podcast today. We talked about a lot of very important things that have happened to her and what she's learned from them, and she talked about things that happened to little Morgan and how older Morgan now sees them, which is a really awesome contrast. Morgan shared about being sexually assaulted. She shared how that made her very angry and bitter and how that affected her life growing up. And she also explained a pivot when things changed. She went to a program called Landmark, which I have been to below, and all of the information for that is in the episode notes, so you can look more about that. But it's a very intensive program that happens over the span of 3 days, I believe, and it changed everything for her. She was able to get up in front of thousands of people and tell them what had happened to her, and she had never told anyone before. Morgan's story is very inspiring. There was a lot of hard things that she had to go through, but where she is now with 2 businesses in a very successful relationship with the people around her is so awesome to see. So all around, this conversation is amazing. Get your notepad, get your notebook out, because you are going to be wanting to take lots of notes. She gives a lot of great advice and wise words. Also, in the interview, I was just getting over my sickness, so I do sound a little bit sick in the video, but don't mind that. The content is really, really awesome other than that. So let's get started.
Hi, well, I'm Morgan. I am 21. I own 2 businesses. That's my dog. She's very vocal. Don't mind her. I think for a person my age, I feel like I've been through hell in a handbag, but I think that's something I'm really excited to share today. And I think kind of at the end of this, you'll see that I guess it doesn't matter what you've been through. It's all kind of a mindset game. And just at the end of the day, I think gratitude and all that kind of stuff is just super important. So yeah, I'm like super excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into some of that things that you're doing right now. Like you said, you have 2 businesses. That's so amazing. Yeah. But let's start from the beginning. So can you tell me where you were raised and maybe a little bit about your family situation?
Yeah. So I was born in Strathmore, and we have moved, oh my gosh, all over Alberta, but the majority of my childhood, we ranched for like up until I was 16, 17. I started out in Jenner, which is kind of down by Medicine Hat. It's a little town. You blink and you miss it. It's like not many people know it's there. But yeah, I got to grow up on, I want to say, probably some of the biggest ranches in Alberta. And I got to help train horses. We had, I think, managed probably over 3,000 head at one point, like 3,000 cows, which is a pretty good number for the few people that worked there. So yeah, I got to see a lot at a young age, which was good. And I think it's one of those things, we'll say, like circle of life, like life and death have been very, from a young age for me, like very fluid. And I've got to, again, like with 4-H and stuff, like that's a responsibility and accountability thing that like not many people get to experience. And I definitely grew up doing a lot of that, which was amazing. And I think I had, for the most part, a pretty picture perfect childhood. which was great. My mom raised my brother as a single mom. She had my brother at 16. She had me at 21. So yeah, she also had a tough time growing up, which is something to say, because we know, like, generation to generation, you do what you know. And so I think having my mom be the generation that makes that change was also super, super important and super awesome. Yeah, I grew up basically having stepdads. My mom married my dad when she was super young. They got pregnant. We're young. We're like, okay, like, we got to get married. That's the thing to do. And like, unfortunately, it didn't work out. And like, for the longest time, like, they were friends and it was awesome. And I'm all for, you know what, if it doesn't work out, it is what it is. But yeah, my dad, unfortunately, kind of, I think for probably almost 10 years, just kind of disappeared, which at a young age, it was really hard. And there was a lot of things that had happened in that time that we'll touch on, that really just for young Morgan, I just didn't understand why things were happening and why things were the way they were. But yeah, I mean, other than like a few negative things, I had a pretty cool childhood growing up. Got to see a lot of stuff. Got to help train horses, work cows, all that kind of stuff. I joke I lived in a combine all my summers, which is awesome. That's something I definitely wouldn't trade for the world.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit about some of those things that young Morgan had to go through that were really difficult?
Yeah. So my mom and my dad, my dad lived in Calgary and we lived out in Jenner. We would drive to Bassano, which is about 40 minutes to an hour. We'd meet him there and I'd go there. I think it was like every other weekend or something, like 1 weekend a month. And I wasn't very old. I want to say I was probably 6 or 7. I was getting sexually abused by one of my step siblings, and I was so young. It wasn't something that I understood what was going on, and I didn't like, not until years later, I like disassociated. Like, there's so many things now that even like my mom will bring up and she's like, oh, do you remember that happening? And I'm like, no, like, I don't. And it's amazing the things our brains do to protect ourselves, to like, we go into protection mode and we just kind of shut everything down. And that at a very young age. So like, the sexual abuse is happening and it wasn't anything that I knew how to tell someone was going on. And so that all kind of happened as my dad just decided, like, I no longer wanted to go to my dad's. My mom didn't know why. I didn't know how to tell her. And so my mom was like, hey, I'm not going to force her to go places she doesn't want to go.
Yeah.
Hope you understand. And so I just kind of stopped seeing my dad for a pretty good chunk of time. And so my brain kind of was wired that, okay, like, bad things happen and people leave. And now that's something that's really like hardwired in, that like, I fight quite often. And everyone in my life is super, I think there's a handful of people that know that have gone off, that's happened. And so it's something very, I don't know, it's unfortunate that it's that common. I know I've talked to a couple of my friends and I'm like, hey, this is something that like I struggle with. And I think you need to know the whole backstory to really understand where my brain's at. And like, it really breaks my heart that I think most of my friend group and how even like my mom and all that kind of stuff have all been through the exact same thing. And I think it's really disheartening that it's that common. But I think that's now a narrative we get to change, and we get to have those conversations, and we get to heal the way we need to heal. And at a very young age, I learned that, you know, like, hurt people. And instead of fixing the hurt people, I can work on me. I'm responsible for me and what I say and what I do. I'm not responsible for anyone else. Anything they do, they say. And as long as I know at the end of the day, I've done my part in healing and being a safe space for other people to bring that to, then I think that's kind of right now the only step forward I get to take in that. It's not, I don't like hold any super hard feelings toward the person that did it. Like, it's very, now I just get to choose my boundaries, and I ask, do you respect those boundaries? And that's kind of where we land. And so I think yeah, it's been a tough ride,
Yeah.
but I think everything that's happened in my life has given me a really solid understanding of, okay, like this is you and you need to be okay with you. At the end of the day, doesn't matter what other people say, doesn't matter what other people do. If you are at peace with yourself, that's what matters. And I think that's something that's been really hard to find, but now that I'm finding it, I'm like, it's crazy. I'm attracting all of these amazing things into my life once I've made that change, which is amazing. But yeah, I guess like that's probably like the big shift in my childhood that took place. That was like, wow, okay, like it really rocked my world. And it's something that, yeah, like it's unfortunate that it happens quite frequently to most people. And the more I change that narrative and have those tough conversations, it's definitely something that, yeah, like it sucks that it's happened, but now we get to heal, and that's the joy of it.
Yeah, I find your mindset about it all very fascinating, and I really love that. And so I'm curious to hear a little bit more of your journey on how you were able to start healing and get through that, and maybe some of the effects that you had that were put on you when you were a little bit younger and still didn't understand, like how you really got to where you are today, because you are so confident and so like amazing. And so I just want to walk with you how you got to that point where you can think this happened to me for a reason, for me to learn and grow, and now I get to heal. So I'd love to
I really like that you say that it happened for me, and it took a long time for me to understand and to, I guess, get out of that victim mindset that, oh my gosh, everyone's bad, everyone's going to leave. And I really, I guess, like there's an ongoing joke I want to say for like our age group of people, the daddy issue joke and all that kind of stuff. And I never like really dove into that, and I was just kind of one of those people that just brushed it off. I was like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
that term means XYZ, and we're going to leave it at that. But I'm finding, like, I guess growing up, it was very tough. I was very closed off. I had like my mom, and my mom was my everything, and like she still is. She's my absolute best friend. She's my rock. And she's definitely helped give me a softness that I'm not sure I could survive without now. And yeah, like growing up through my teenage years, oh my gosh, looking at it now, I thought I was a terrible person. I was mean, I was nasty, I was angry all the time. I found myself, everything's happening to me, my life is terrible, and everything that follows suits with that. And like I genuinely thought that was okay, and treating people according to how I felt was okay. And then I would find myself creating these situations that validated the way I felt, and no one else feelings mattered because I hurt. And if I hurt and I'm mad, I can do what I want. And that is so not the case.
Yeah.
And so my mom actually ended up sending me and my older brother to this seminar. It's called Landmark. And I can send you more details on that if you want to put that in the comments or whatever. But I joked that it literally changed me. And so it was like a 3-day seminar, and it definitely just I did a complete 180. I went in there an angry teenager. Like, it wasn't something that if you're under 18, you're not really supposed to do it. And I think I did it at 17.
Okay.
And I went in there angry, and I hated the world, hated myself, hated everything about myself. I was miserable all the time. And I came out thinking that, like, oh my gosh, everything is sunshine and everything happens for me, and this is great. And there was a lot of things a lot of demons I had to face that I didn't. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, my dogs are
okay.
A lot of demons that I had to face that I didn't even know were in there. And it all came down to me feeling a certain way, me not understanding that feeling, me making up these scenarios and making out people to be terrible to validate how I felt, instead of maybe taking a step back and realizing that was being very unkind, and I was being terrible to all the people that were by me, even though I was being that terrible. And yeah, like I came out of that seminar just like it rocked my world. And even at that, like I think I stood up in front of 300 plus strangers and told them about being sexually abused and raped and all of this kind of stuff, and everything that I had never told a soul. Like at that point, I hadn't even told my mom. I hadn't told anyone.
Yeah.
And it was something like that. It was almost like I felt more comfortable standing naked in front of those 300 people than telling them this is what's happened to me and this is maybe why I'm so angry.
Yeah.
And that was definitely, that was one of, we'll say like one of my core memories. And every time I find myself sinking into that rut of like, oh my gosh, this is terrible and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, no, okay, you know what? This is how far we've come. It's okay. We can sit, we can rest. You can lay down, you can feel the feelings, just don't stay there too long.
Yeah.
And you're going to get stagnant. And if you're not growing, basically you're dying. That's how I look at it. And I think the people you also surround yourself with is just, it is so important. I saw this quote. It was you become the top 5 people you surround yourself with. And I think that is so true. And yeah, I think like at the end of the day, it's all just, it's a fight with your brain. And I've suffered like really bad depression, my anxiety, like I have crippling anxiety most of the time. And it's just, it feels like you're bantering with your brain all day. And people are like, oh, why are you so tired? You didn't do a whole lot today. And I'm like, I know. But this 6 inches of space between my ears says different. And so it's one of those things. It feels like a constant battle with your brain. But the moment you just, you see that, you know what, maybe they didn't have a good upbringing either. And you just need to love them and accept them for where they're at and not carry those expectations on them. No one's a mind reader. And that was another tough thing. Like everything that happened in my childhood, I brought that into relationships, and it was tough. And for the longest time, like I had a high school boyfriend for almost 4 years, and we had a conversation, I think a year after we broke up. And I told him, I was like, I have to apologize. I was not in a headspace that you deserved. And I think, again, you can have your feelings, you can feel them, all that kind of stuff. Just don't lose your shit. Basically, you can feel it, have it, take the time you need, but just, you can do whatever you want as long as you're not being unkind. And I think that's important. And I like, even now, the relationship I'm in, I just like, we don't fight often. We don't argue. And it's I used to be super combative because I had to be right and all this kind of stuff. And now it's like, you know what? If I approach you with kindness and softness, that's what matters.
Yes.
Nothing else matters. And I think like kindness and softness are my two top things that I struggled with for so long. And they're definitely my go-to. Like, you know what? If I feel my anxiety building up and all that kind of stuff, I just like, Kate, we're going to take a few minutes. We're going to go self-reflect. And I usually ask myself, like, Kate, like, if this bothers me, why? Is it because I feel like I'm wrong? I'm getting pushed on in ways that make me feel uncomfortable, which is good. And so now, yeah, I think like I've now become a space for all of my friends. I think I take it to heart if people don't feel comfortable telling me things or coming to me about something, because I pride myself on being that space that, okay, you know what? My feelings are your responsibility. You tell me whatever you need to tell me. And if I don't like it, that's probably something that I now need to work through. But if you feel a certain way, your feelings are valid. We'll get through it. We'll work through it. And I think as like a daughter, a girlfriend, a friend, all that kind of stuff, it is so important that you stay soft and you stay gentle. And I think like at the end of the day, it is just, it's you. And if you can control what you say, how you say things, what you do, the rest just kind of honestly falls into place. And yeah, like the mindset thing, I constantly work on it. And as confident as like sometimes I see him on social media and all that kind of stuff, it's tough.
Yeah.
But like it is so worth it. And I think having like a rock solid support system, someone you can be like, hey, you know what? I need to ugly cry for 20 minutes and I just need you to listen. And that's it. And I think finding that, also like having an outlet. I used to never cry. Nothing could make me cry. And now I have like my weekly cry sessions because I'm like, you know what? I need to express things, and crying is my way to do it. I don't get angry. I don't like being angry. So I just cry and then we're good. And that's my way of handling it. But, and I know there's a million other ways of handling it, but that's, I guess, kind of in a nutshell, how that flowed through the years.
Yeah, it's so crazy to hear everything that you've been through. I also went to Landmark at a pretty young age as well. So I know exactly what you're talking about and a lot of things that you had to be put through. My question for you is like, were you hesitant to go, or were you like, I want to get unstuck, please let me go to this? Like, what was your mindset going into it?
Oh my gosh, I fought my mom tooth and nail on it. I was like, nope, I don't need it. I'm fine. Everything's fine. That was like, I'm fine. I don't need it. I'm independent.
Yeah.
I don't need anyone. And I walked out of there just like a blubbering mess. I was like, Mom, I'm so sorry. You were right. Like oh my gosh, I had so many messes to clean up. And I know, like, if you've been through Landmark, you know, I think it's day 2 that they get you to make a phone call.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was like, immediately, Kate, I'm phoning my mom. It rang and she picked up and I heard her voice and I like, oh my gosh, it was a flow of emotions that I had never felt before. Wow. And I bawled for 10 minutes, the first 10 minutes of the phone call. And she was just like, you know what, honey, like, it's okay. I get it. Cause she had done it a few months prior.
Yeah.
And that, having her be that space that it was okay for me to do that in was so important. And yeah, I think like if you have the chance to do it, by all means do it. It is something you carry with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's definitely a crazy program because they make you think and do things that you never thought you would ever do. Like it is crazy. So I also recommend doing it. I think that it's really cool that you decided to call your mom. So why did you decide to call your mom of all people?
So again, like I said, like she's my rock. And for the longest time with me being in that mindset. And so she, like prior to Landmark, we were both kind of in the same boat. We were like depressed and our anxiety just like, we wore it like a shirt. And we were both like, you know what? Like we grew up in the mindset of like, I'm not going to ask you to do it because I can do it myself with peace of mind knowing I've done it. And like I read this article on hyper independence is a trauma response. And that has been everyone like in my family, we're all hyper independent. Like we've got this, we don't need to rely on anyone. And that's just kind of how it's been. And she was the one person that no matter how often she was there for me, no matter how mean I was to her, no matter how nasty things got, she was still there. And she was the one that really took the brunt of all of my anger and everything that was going on inside of me that I didn't know. I didn't know why it was happening. I didn't know what was happening, but she definitely got the brunt of it. And that was probably one of the hardest conversations I've ever had, but like probably one of the most important.
Yeah, I think with our family, they often get the brunt of everything because, you know, you hit your breaking points around them and then you explode and then you're like, oh, I should have done that, but they were there. So it's kind of like how that happens. So I completely understand what you're saying. So after you were done Landmark, did you see that you were starting to seek a little bit more personal development and growth? And like, what was the huge mindset thing that was like, okay, I need to keep growing?
I kept remembering how I felt when I stood up in front of all those people and spilled my guts out to 300 strangers. And the way I felt walking out of there, I started viewing everything. I want to say very primal in, like, we'll say, for example, guys flirting. I look at that as simply like a survival tactic you know, those like National Geographic videos you watch in like science class of like the birds and like the fancy feathers, and they're just trying to get the females like attention.
Yeah.
That's now like how I view things. And so now like something I struggle with is like small talk, because I just like, I want to learn you, and I want to learn your brain, and I want to know why you are the way you are. And I want to know, like, I want to learn you and your soul and your brain. And like, that's like, I develop friendships super quickly usually, because it's just like, we have those uncomfortable conversations that a lot of people don't even know themselves on a deep enough level to even know how to answer those questions.
Yeah.
And so I found myself like hungry for those conversations, and hungry to share what I had and share the breakthroughs I had. And I'm like, hey, this is how I got my breakthrough. You should do it. You should try it.
Yeah.
And like, I was so hungry to make people feel as good as I felt walking out of there. And I think that's when like I really, my circles really shifted. So I found a lot of the friends I had, they very quickly sloughed away, because it was very like, they'd start complaining, and I'm like, oh, I used to be like that. I know the shoes you're in, and I understand why you genuinely feel this way, and why you genuinely think that occurring to people this way is the norm and it's okay. But I'm just like, I couldn't sit and convince them that there is better out there. And if they just shifted their mindset and just adapted the, like, we'll say like the stories that our brains make up and all this kind of stuff, like if they just sat down and listened, and they were like, nope, I'm happy where I am. And I'm like, you know what, that's okay.
Yeah.
And I really struggled with that, because I'd attach very quickly, and I really hate leaving people behind. But like, I learned very fast that, like, you know what, if you're growing, you can't take everyone with you, and that's okay. But it's like an apartment building. There's multiple doors, multiple apartments on every level. You're going to walk in, you're going to meet some people. They're going to be like, oh, you want to come look at the next apartment with me? Sure. But not everyone wants to look at the next level of apartments on the next level.
Yeah.
But you still need to go in, look around, learn what you need to learn, take what you take the lessons, take the brunts, take everything in stride, and move on. Like, I find I walk into every conversation acting like I don't know a thing. Like my ego can take that. I am okay not knowing anything. If I walk in with no preconceived notions, not acting like I know more than you or anything, I'm so much more receptive to what you have to offer and what I can learn from you and all that kind of stuff. And so I find like that's definitely how, like, I guess things shifted.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I find it so fascinating that you had like completely rewritten your truths. Like, you went from believing that people left you and you were hurt and broken, and you just turned that completely over, and you like started living by new truths. And I'm fascinated to hear a little bit more about it, because as someone who has struggled with anxiety and depression as well, like that voice, oh my gosh, sometimes it just never stops. It can be very overwhelming when you say like, oh, why were you so tired that day? And it's like, it is that consuming, that constant conversation with your head. So how did you not get trapped in thinking your old ways through and with the way your mind works?
So the circle I have, I ask them to be brutally honest with me all the time. And so we kind of have this thing. If I like text my friend, I'm like, hey, you know what? Can I vent? Are you open to that? And if they're like, hey, you know what? Sorry, I'm not in the headspace. Okay, totally fine. We definitely have that boundary set up. And if they're like, hey, are you just wanting to vent? Do you want answers? What are you looking for here? And so if I'm just looking to vent, I vent. Or and I'm always like, you know what? Like, I'm always open to feedback. If you see something I don't, you need to tell me. And I think that is so important. But you also need to be receptive to that. And if you ask people for honesty, you need to be able to take it. As much as you don't like it, don't want it, if you know that you need it, then you need to take it in stride. And if you need to chew on that for a day or two, you take your time. But I think that is so important. And again, like, my mom is my rock. If I'm like, hey, this, and she's like, no, let's dissect that. and she hits me between the eyes with stuff all the time. And it is a brutal, blunt honesty. And I know it comes from love that I think everyone needs in their life. And then she does that with me too. If she comes to me and is like, hey, this, I'm like, okay. And so we dissect it and go through why she feels that way, why, all that kind of stuff. And I think having someone like that, whether it be a friend, like your therapist, whatever, you need to have an outside eye that you can take the honesty from.
Yeah.
And so, I think, the people you have in your life are
huge.
The real turning point for that.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think the fact that you are asking for honesty is huge. But I know like accepting it can sometimes be like, oh, I don't want to hear that. I actually don't want to hear that. But thank you. But no, I think that you're so right. And so that kind of leads perfect into my next question about, you have talking a lot about who you surround yourself with in this conversation. So I'm curious to hear, what advice you would give someone who maybe doesn't have the best friend group, or who, is really struggling with saying goodbye to some friends that maybe they've been friends with for years. And they're like, how do I move on from this? Because from what I can hear, it sounds like you have become quite an expert on, getting people who support you, like good people, surrounding yourself with good people. So I just love to hear what you have to say off of that.
I am really glad you asked that. So we'll say like in high school, again, like I had a boyfriend of like 3 or 4 years, and his friends were my friends, and his best friend was my best friend, and all that went hand in hand. And we were in high school, and again, like that's not somewhere that you feel you can branch out. And that was like Cremona school, and there was I want to say there was a few hundred kids in the whole school that was like K to 12.
Yeah.
And like classes, I think my class was like 18 kids, and so it's pretty slim pickings for friends and all that kind of stuff. And I find like small town mindset can be super toxic. And it's just, you feel like you're in a box and you can't get out. And so another big shift for me was one of my guy friends would consistently, like at parties, he'd try to like come up and do things to me that obviously I didn't want, and it wasn't okay. And like his best friend was my boyfriend. And so it was just something that I just like, it consistently felt like I was at this bottom of the barrel, and people just kept stacking stuff on top. And I was like, I felt like I had no way out.
Yeah.
And there was one instance we had a party, and this guy friend of mine had taken pictures of me changing. And I had a really, like, I didn't catch him in the act, but I had a really gross feeling that it was happening. Ended up finding the photos. And I was I was more hurt than anything, knowing that I had let this person in, and they just decided to do that nonchalantly. And so I was so gray. I was like, I felt like I got hit by a train. I had no idea what to do. And so my boyfriend at the time kind of confronted him about it. And then we all just kept being friends, and the friend group went back to normal. And so that I really struggled with, being, again, like feeling, we'll say, alone, like the person I needed to show up for me when I needed it the most, they dropped me. And so that again was when guards went up, my friend group, this is terrible. And then that guy that had did that stuff started dating my best friend at the time, which was also part of our friend group. And then at that point, I was just kind of like, you know what? I would rather spend all of my time alone, working on myself, and just being alone. Feeling alone sucks. And it is something, unfortunately, that you just have to feel it, and you just have to learn to be. But at some point you make the shift where you enjoy your own time. And I made the decision. I was like, you know what? My energy is better put elsewhere. And it was a very nasty breakup. Friend group exploded, like typical, like small town drama. Like I'm sure, like we all look back on it now and we're like, okay. At the time, it seemed like our worlds were ending, but now it's like, you know what, like, we're just going to let that be. But and there are sometimes that you you feel like there's nowhere you can go and your life is going to end if you lose your friends. And that is so not the case. And I genuinely believe that. I was like, oh my gosh, I was so worried about what people thought of me, what people said about me. And I was like, you know what, at the end of the day, they're going to talk about you anyway. It doesn't matter. Like, you might as well be doing what makes you happy. Because if it makes you happy, it doesn't need to make sense to anyone else. And if they want to take the time to learn you, then awesome. They're probably worth your time. If not, if they want to believe everything everyone is saying, then you know what? Take it with a grain of salt and be on your way. They are just so not worth it.
Yeah, I think that it's really hard for people in situations until you hit that breaking point where you are like, because I had not a similar experience, but I had an experience where I was like, I prefer to be alone than be around these people. And so I think it's hard for, people in that situation to see it. I mean, us two, we're sitting here, we're telling you like, it's so much better to be alone. Like being alone sucks. And I know like you can have lots of people around you and still feel alone. And it's just like, it's a hard thing to do, but it's a lot better. You have to kind of outweigh, like you said, your energy was better spent not involved. Right. And so it's kind of where you get to that breaking point where you're just like, you know what, I'm better alone than to be with this toxic person or group or whatever it is. So I appreciate you sharing that story. I think it's very important. Yeah. So I'm really excited to hear kind of how your journey continues and to hear about your career and different things that you've done. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So not long after Landmark, my mom's relationship at the time, they broke up. And so I moved out and she moved into Calgary. And I was living in Sundre at the time and I had gotten a job in Carstairs and I already had like a part-time job in Carstairs. And so I was just kind of looking to fill my schedule. And so I got a job with this cleaning company, which isn't something that I ever wasn't good at cleaning growing up, hated cleaning my room, hated cleaning my house. Like, I'm sure like now that I look back at it, like my space was gross. I didn't care. It was bad. And so I got this job and she was like, yeah, in like a few months, we'll get you clients in Sundre. So I'm not driving an hour and a bit, whatever it was, like twice a day. Some time went by and I was like, you know what? Like I would go over my books at the end of the month and I'm like, I am just not making money at all. And so training wise, they had set aside 6 weeks for training. My first week of training, the girl was like, you know what? Like you're fine to go on your own next week. I don't know. You don't need this much training. You caught on quick. You're good. And I was like, okay, perfect. Like I didn't think it was rocket science. It was nice. Like all the clients were amazing. And so a few months went by and I'd gone home and I looked at my roommate and I was like, I'm just going to start my own cleaning company as a joke. And she was like, really? I was like, yeah, why would I not want to control my own schedule and have my own clients, all that kind of stuff. And so by the end of that week, I had a full roster of clients, which was like insane. Wow. Like, I don't know how it happened so fast, but I was like, my ducks aren't in a row. I don't know how to run a business. I was like, what was I thinking? And I like just turned 19. And I went in there, I joke, I went in way too cocky with way too much confidence. But now I've been at it for 2 years. I have a business partner now. We're looking to hire our second girl. Like it has been a bumpy ride to say the least. And there is so many people that I've met along the way that is like, they have just rocked my world. Like small business owners. I have a friend in Dog Pound who's a mom and she is just not a friendship that I ever would have made if I hadn't started this company. And I think that is just so cool. And again, like if you're looking to start a business, just do it. And I know you hear that all over the internet all the time. They're like, it's easy, just do it. It's not going to be easy. I joke that like I left a 9 to 5 to work 24/7.
Yes. Oh, I've heard that.
Yeah. But like, I genuinely wouldn't change it for the world. Like today, one of my clients canceled. So I rescheduled my other one and I got the day off just because I wanted to and I could. Yeah. And that is the kind of stuff that like it pays off and it's a lot of work. And I think it's statistically, if your small business doesn't make it 4 years or 5 years, then you're never going to make it.
Yeah.
And like right now we are on an uphill climb, which is just, it's a dream. And even through COVID and stuff, like all of my clients were so kind, and they treat me like family and I treat them like family. And it is just, and like our hired girl, we treat her like family. And it's just, again, like the mindset piece, if you walk into anything with a strong mindset, understanding yourself and understanding A plus B equals C, whatever, it is so much easier. And I was looking to hire, and I had met Jessica, my business partner, she's like basically my sister now. And she is just sunshine in human form.
Yeah.
Through our parents. And she had a small cleaning company, and she worked nighttime at a vet clinic. And we were kind of chatting. We both kind of skirted around the idea for a few minutes, for a few months, because like I didn't want to like encroach on her cleaning territory, and she didn't want to encroach on mine. And so I finally one day I was just like, all right, this has been on my mind. I need to come out and say it. If you shoot it down, totally fine. But like, I need to get this off my chest. And she was like, I was thinking the exact same thing. And so I was kind of like, I was in charge of, but like, I was the thing between her having a place to live and like her making rent and her not making rent.
Yeah.
So she had like quit her job and all that kind of stuff to come work with me. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm panicking so hard. And yeah, I think the first week we had a full schedule for her, and like we had too many clients. We didn't have enough manpower to accommodate the intake, like the influx of clients we had, which was just like, we sat down and we were like, we're growing, and we are growing fast, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, like being a small business owner, it is tough. But I think the people you meet along the way, the connections, the conversations, all that kind of stuff, like it makes it so worth it. And yeah, I have a photography business too. I started it as like a hobby when I was like, I think 15 or 16. I got my first camera. I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
And now like only in the last probably 2 years, I've gotten pretty serious. And now this, like the last 2 months have just blown up.
Yeah.
For my photography business, I got featured, or one of like some of my photos were in Trailblazer magazine. And so since being in that, I did 3 shoots for the spring edition for that magazine. I actually just did my 3rd one yesterday.
Wow.
So yeah, it has been amazing, like just insane. Again, like the connections through like photography, and I'm like knowing how I feel when I have a nice photo of me, or like I know how that feels, and I know how good I feel about myself, and I know that I can make other people feel that way. And that is just something that I value so much. Knowing that I can give you that feeling is just like, I wear that like a badge of honor. And yeah, again, like that's also been a bumpy ride, but again, like so worth it.
Yeah, I think when you're starting a business, any business, it'll be a bumpy ride, but I think that it really matters on what you value, because I feel like the connections that you can make, like that I've made as an entrepreneur, I'm like, I would have never made these if I never started my own business. So I think it's like really inspiring and crazy. What would you have to say to someone who is afraid of failure, point blank? I want to hear what you'd have to say to someone that is afraid of starting and everything.
Yeah. I heard this quote, and it was, if you're going to fail, you're going to fail forward. So basically, you know what? If you're falling on your face, that means you have forward movement, and forward movement is what we want. And I think I have learned more from my mistakes and falling on my face. And I haven't had many. I can count on one hand how many unhappy clients I've had in 2 years. But I take those to heart, and I dissect it. I'm like, Kate, where did I go wrong? What could I have done better? All of this kind of stuff. And if you handle it with grace, and you take the time to forgive yourself, and you learn from that experience, the failure doesn't matter. All good things come from failure. And I think the lessons you learn when you fail are so much more important than the ones that you get first try. It's like if you worked all of your life to buy like $1 million car, and on the same day I meet you at the dealership and give you the exact same car you've worked your whole life for, what one are you going to want?
Mm-hmm.
The one you put all of the time into, and the one you put the time in to save that money. And now that car isn't just a car. That car is all of your years of work and all of the blood, sweat, and tears and the happy moments and the sad moments. And that is now what that car represents. And that's how I see like my friendships and my businesses and all that kind of stuff. Like they're a piece of me. My friends, my family, my boyfriend, like they're all a piece of me. And so are my businesses, my clients, everything. I take it all like so personally, but I think that's what makes the difference. My clients and stuff, they aren't just they aren't just money on paper. They aren't just names on my phone. Like,
right.
A lot of the time, Jessica and I we'll get home late because our clients sit and like they make us tea and we sit and we have conversations like this, which is just, again, something like if I hadn't started my own business and stepped out of the box and gave myself a slap in the face, or like, hey, you are in your comfort zone. And if you stay in your comfort zone, like your comfort zone is going to kill you.
Yeah.
And yeah, failure is probably the best thing that's ever happened to me. And it is something that like, I'm hungry for it. I'm hungry to fail. I'm hungry to try and fail. So if I'm like, hey, if I failed, I dissect it, I try again. And it just makes that victory so much better.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. And I know before you talked a little bit about social media, and I'd love to dive into that as well a little bit. I know social media pretty well as well. I love it a lot. There's a lot of bad things about it as well, which I like can see. But when we were talking before, you made a comment where like sometimes you don't feel the way that you may project on social media. Which I'm like, oh, I like related with that so much. I'm like, sometimes I am posting something and I'm not being fake, but that was the one good day, the one day that I felt good out of the whole week. So I'd love to hear a little bit about like your opinion about social media. And I know you use your platform to be a light. So you can shout out your Instagram as well. I'd love for everyone to follow you. She's so amazing.
Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh, I think I have 3 accounts right now. My personal, which is just Morgan Storch. My photography, which is Ranahan Photo, and then Farmhouse Clean Co. is my other business one. Social media, I think, it's definitely been something that I've avoided for the longest time. And I definitely wanted, when I first got it, I think I was 11 or 12, which was probably the worst time for any little girl to get social media and see all of this kind of stuff. You have to be a certain way, you have to look this way, you have to be this way for people to like you. And that, like, again, like I definitely took that to heart. And I hated myself and my body for the longest time. I look through photos now and there's a good chunk of my life where I don't have photos of myself because I refuse to let people take photos of me, which now, like looking back, I'm like, man, like if I ever have kids, I have no photos of myself because I genuinely believed that I had to fit this cutout or I wasn't liked or I wasn't beautiful or anything. And like, I'm not a small girl by any means, and I never have been. And it's taken me a long time to embrace that and love that. And now I think the turning point for my like social media, I guess, I woke up one morning and I was just like scrolling through my Instagram and I was like, oh my gosh, there is just, we'll say Instagram Barbies. I was like, man, like I am so tired of seeing this on my feed every day. I went through and I unfollowed 90% of people that I followed. And I went through and I found the real and the raw and people that I related to as who I am today, not the person 2, 3, 4 years ago. And I had shared like my sexual abuse and like my rape and all that kind of stuff. I had shared that on my Instagram because I was like, you know what? Like if I'm going to be me, this is me. This has happened to me. And I know for a fact, unfortunately, it has happened to a lot of people. And the amount of messages and texts and stuff that I got, oh my, oh my, I had read them all, and I just set my phone down for a few hours, and I cried and I cried and I cried. And I was like, oh my God. And it was kind of bittersweet. Like, it was something, like, I had people that were like, yeah, like I never told anyone. And then I had seen that you had put this on your social media, and I thought that was crazy. But then I was like, wow, like, I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
And that was when I really realized, I was like, wow, okay, like, social media isn't just like the social media Barbies. So now, like, yeah, like, I'll post cute selfies or whatever, but like, a lot of the time I'll like post a lot of quotes or repost that kind of stuff. And it's not that I'm always going through that. It's that I know that someone at some point is probably going to need to hear that today.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, like, some point down the road, I'm going to need to hear it again.
Yeah.
And just knowing that perfect strangers message me and were like, yeah, hey, because you posted that today, I did this, or something along those lines. Like, I impacted a perfect stranger who took the time out of their day to message me. And I was like, that just blows my mind. And I hold that so dear to my heart, knowing that I've turned this now, into a positive platform, which is amazing. Yeah. I love that.
No, I love seeing it too. And I think it's a really interesting fact that you brought up of Instagram Barbies. Like, I've never heard that expression before, but I think it sums it up pretty well, in that I feel like there is this shift on social media, or maybe it's just the people that I'm following. Because like what you said is, when you went through, I highly recommend that people do that often, because it is important that what you are consuming is helping you, not making you feel bad about yourself. Like, for me, I was like, I'm going to hurt someone by unfollowing them, but I'm hurting myself every single time I see their smiling face or something awesome that they did. And it's not to do with them. Like, it's to do with the inside that's causing me pain, right? That I want something that they have, or something like that, right? And so I find that it's so important that our feeds are healthy and good, and then that you enjoy to see those things. Like, mine is pretty much all quotes at this point. Like, it's completely converted, because before I would just see everybody's lives and everybody's photos, and now I'm like, I don't really want to see that much, because it's not filling me up. But I think it's so important that we do realize that what we are consuming has an impact on us, like majorly. And I think it's so important that there's more people like you that decide to be a light and just be like, you know what, I'm going to share this quote today because it really helped me and it might help someone else, and just be real. Because for me personally, so you shared your struggles with body image on your Instagram, and I was like, oh my God, I've never seen somebody do that. Like, I was like, this is crazy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I struggled with so many of these things, like the same as you were, hated my body so much, always want to change it, always look back on photos and be like, oh, like, I got so mad at myself. And I wasn't even like, I'm like looking back, I'm like, dang, I look good in that. Like,
exactly. You're like, wow, who is she? She's beautiful.
But like at the time, I remember where it was like just hating myself so much. And when you started opening up about that, I was like, oh, I was blown away. And I was like, it's nice when people open up about real things, because I feel like we're all trying to be perfect, and it's hard. It's hard to be that perfect person, have the perfect body, perfect mind, perfect life. It's just not realistic. And it's really refreshing when people share things. And the part that you said, that people feel less alone, which can be more from the truth. Like, I have started this podcast in the hopes that more people feel less alone. By you opening up about your sexual assault story, like, I've never had to talk about that on this podcast before, but I'm happy that you have decided to share it with us, because I know you said there's so many people that have gone through this, and the fact that they know that they're not alone now just makes the world of a difference. So I wanted to thank you for sharing everything that you have today.
Of course. Well, like, I'm glad that I can share it. I think if I had someone that shared that kind of stuff with me when I was younger, I think maybe I would have started this journey a little sooner, but like, I'm a firm believer everything happens for a reason.
Yes.
Everything is going to take its course. If you like, you just need to learn to just be. And yeah. So, well, I love that you had me on, and I'm really honored that I get to share all this with you.
Yes. I end every podcast interview with 4 questions that I've loved to ask you. You have given so many pieces of advice. I can't even, like, if I was listening to this podcast right now, I've had like sheets of notes because so many golden nuggets. But I'll still ask you these questions. So the first one is, what is some of the best advice you've received and from whom?
Oh man. I'm going to say it again, probably from my mom. She's my rock. And I think of this quite frequently. And like I've said it probably a few times in this interview. If it makes sense to you and it makes you happy, it doesn't need to make sense to anyone else. And I never really understood that. But within the last 2 or 3 years, I've definitely felt it. And you just learn to understand that, you know what, like, if they don't understand it, that's okay. But if it genuinely makes you happy, I think us as a human race, like, who woke up one day and decided, Kate, this is perfection. You have to be like this. A person exactly like you. There is nothing on this planet that I think can make someone better than another person other than how you treat other people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think if you just kind of step back and look at who set that standard, it's a matter of another person, and you need to reset that standard for yourself and just be.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. Something else that you said too that kind of relates to that is that, like, people are going to criticize you and talk about you no matter what. Like, when you said that, I'm like, yes, because it's so true. And so that's why it is so important to do what makes you happy, because people are going to talk about you regardless. So do what makes you happy.
Do what you want.
Yeah, exactly. All right. The next question is, what is some of the worst advice you've received?
Oh my gosh. I'm not sure if I've gotten like bad advice directly.
Yeah.
But I think, again, like, touching on like the whole like toxic social media thing, I think it's the advice, I guess, that, you have to be a certain way. You have to do these workouts. You have to eat this. You have to do all that kind of stuff. Definitely was probably the most detrimental to my mental health, my body image, and all that kind of stuff. And I think being anything but yourself is probably the worst advice.
Yeah, no, that's true. I like that answer a lot. That's a really good answer to that. Thank you. All right. The next one is, what is some advice that you would tell your younger self, or if you can't think of it in that context, maybe someone in the younger generation?
Oh my gosh. To myself, honestly, that like, there are things that you don't love, that you don't cherish right now, that you are going to wish that you had. And just being is okay. There's no, like, it's not a race. Things are going to be okay. Things are going to work out the way they need to work out. And like, you're just along for the ride, And I joke, people are always like, oh, you're so mature for your age. I think all of my clients think I'm like 28 with a kid. And I'm like, I joke, I'm like, no, like, I just have to grow up fast. It was the trauma.
Yeah.
But like, as much as I say that as a joke, like, everyone I talk to, they're like, no, like, if they've experienced that, it's the truth. And I think just growing up too fast now, like, I love it, but there are some pieces that I wish that I hadn't grown up so fast in. But that's probably what I'd say to little Morgan.
Morgan, I love that. Awesome. Okay, last question, how I end off every interview. And I think you're going to like this one because of what you said at the beginning. But what are you grateful for?
Oh my gosh. Everything. There's days that I'm grateful my car almost doesn't start. Like, things that used to rock my world. I'm like, all right, okay. Like, that happened for a reason. Like, I have probably like the most amazing boyfriend. He is such an amazing support system. His family are just, again, like sunshine in human form. Like, I've never felt this like genuinely loved and welcomed. Like my mom, my little sister, it's just, and like my entire friend group, it's just like I've made this little family.
Yeah.
And like I never want to leave. Like I'm so unbelievably happy. And like we just moved. Like I just moved in with my boyfriend. Like as much as I see him all the time, he's gone right now, but as much as like usually I see him every day, and it's just like I am grateful for every moment that I get to spend with you, because I know, God forbid, the day that I don't get to do that again, I'm going to look back and think that like, man, all of the little things, every time he brings me a coffee, every time my mom phones me, every time my little sister is like, hi Morgan, I missed you so much, and I get a big kiss, like those are the things that I need to carry with me, and I need to love, and I need to hold on to, because the day they're gone, I'm going to miss them.
Yeah.
And it's just like, again, like there's that voice inside your head. There's days where you're like, man, what is going on? And it's just like, it's a battle for no reason. And I just like, Brian really helps kind of like bring me down back to earth some days. Like we balance each other out pretty good. The days he's up here, I mellow him out, and vice versa. And it's just having those people in my life, and the place I get to live, and just all that kind of stuff. Like I'm just unbelievably grateful for everything, every good thing, every bad thing. I just like, I love it all.
I love that. That's so awesome. It's such a great way to leave the interview. So thank you so much again. I really enjoyed talking to you. It's been so awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Morgan, for being so vulnerable and sharing the parts of your story that are some of the hardest times of your life, but also some of the best times in your life. The amount of advice and wisdom that you shared with all of us is so amazing for a 21-year-old. So thank you so much for coming on and just sharing everything about your life and what you have learned from the things that have happened to you. If you love this episode or related to it in any ways, I'd love to hear about it. Please drop me a comment on any of my platforms, either on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or you can even leave a review right here where you are listening to your podcast. Thank you so much for joining me again this week. We have lots of amazing stories coming up in the next couple of months, and I can't wait to share them all with you. Have a beautiful day. Bye.